Hello and welcome to the U.S. History Kevin Mason channel. Today we have Jacob Denney as your host, as usual, and his two guests are Josh Fussy and James Hook. How's it going, guys?
It's going fantastic.
Yeah,
All
we're
right,
doing great.
good. All right, today we'll be talking about. Today we will be talking about our new topic, three controversial leaders in American history. And we've got Christopher Columbus, Andrew Jackson, and Nat Turner. Any other intros you guys got?
The only thing I'm gonna say is Mason better strap in right now because it's gonna get wild.
All right. Hook?
Nope, we're good. We're good to go. We're roaring. We're roaring.
All right. So we'll start it off with Christopher Columbus. Sailed over to the New World in 1492. And settled on the new land and started to show everyone how to expand westward really in the new territory. And a lot of the controversy is brought up because of currently about the national holiday that is connected with it and how everyone views it differently, but how people also see it as his brutality and people celebrating his brutality towards the Native Americans that were already on the land. I know a lot of Native Americans where I'm from call it Indigenous People Day and not Christopher Columbus Day or Columbus Day. And they really don't see it as a holiday of like we're celebrating. It's viewed to them as more of a holiday that's demeaning towards their race and what their culture's gone through. With him sending some of the Native Americans back as slave trade and some giving them the worst ships and not giving them crew members that knew how to sail, and them getting stuck in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and not being able to get across and die on the way there. They also dealt with murder, and a lot of the women were raped by his crew when they got here. His main goal wasn't even to get to North America or what was soon to be the United States of America. He was trying to find a new trade route from Western Europe across over into China, and they did not know that that continent was even on the map. And he ended up in the Caribbean and did not find travel. Yeah, Fussy?
So I got kind of a question for you since
Yeah.
Columbus is your man. What do you think could have happened if he actually did find the right trade route? Like, do you think America would have got discovered by someone else later down the road,
Well,
like from Europe, or do you think like for a long time it would just go kind of undiscovered and Native Americans would still rule the land?
Leif, like, if you want to look at the technicality, like, Leif Erikson was actually the first one to discover the new land, but he didn't settle and think of it as new land that he should turn to his own territory. He was there and he left. And so it was still uncharted territory for the Europeans, and Leif Erikson knew about it, but didn't, I guess, move as strongly towards expansion and settling like Columbus did on his movement.
So he wasn't really excited about it.
Yeah. Like, I wouldn't say he wasn't excited about it, but he didn't look at it as a progressive thing for his country per se.
Okay. So he didn't really want to take it over necessarily. He
Yeah.
just kind of like viewed it as nice new land, but
Yeah, he viewed it as new land and that there were Native American people there, but he didn't see it as new territory that he could take over. And
okay.
so, and like some of the like with Columbus, the controversy adds to that too, is since Leif Erikson was there, but he didn't take it as the aggressive power control move. Why is there not a Leif Erikson Day rather than a Columbus Day, even though Columbus was the one that was murdering hundreds and hundreds of people and expanding not only on the eastern coast, but starting to move westward as well and push them west.
Okay.
Hey, Denney, you say that Columbus was murdering hundreds of people. Why exactly was he doing that again?
Most of it was either them putting up a fight with what he was doing or not doing what he wanted them to do, and it was just controversy like between the two groups. Just like with everything, when new people come around, you're not going to be the most welcoming of them, but you're also not going to fight immediately. Like they didn't have the best of terms with them, and he didn't get off on the right terms with them, and so they took the aggressive stance and needed to protect their territory, which they eventually would lose completely. So,
Mm-hmm.
Also,
uh-huh.
with that controversy, uh, like people nowadays are talking and saying that Christopher Columbus kind of was like a dirtbag or just like not a good person in general for killing those people or and like torturing them
Yeah,
in ways that you're talking about.
yeah.
So like, do you think that like it made sense for him to do it at the time? Because nowadays we don't really like that's not normal for people to torture people. But I'm sure back then it was probably normal. Do you think that it was all right for them to do that?
I think it's just the evolution of like mindsets and morality, I'd say, because now you like you can view that as a threat, and another turn like the Native American threat, and we'll talk about this more when we get to Nat Turner, but the threat to people's lives then is comparable to like now when we hear the term Muslim threat or terrorist, like Muslim terrorist threat. And so it's kind of a fear factor term, but also at the same time, it does make you think about the topic as well.
Okay.
What do you guys think? Controversial or reasonable?
I personally, I'd say a bit of both. Just because, like, I mean, obviously, him mass murdering Indians was not a good look. But at the same time, since I believe he didn't find any gold, and I think that's what he was going for. Don't quote me on it though.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, he had to bring something back, otherwise, his ass was kind of grass. So I think that's kind of what he saw was going to be the thing he was going to take back, and that way that the king and queen, I believe King and Queen Ferdinand it was, wouldn't be as mad at him, since I mean he said he was going to come back with gold, I believe,
Yep.
but obviously that didn't happen. So I'd say a bit of both, but looking at it in a modern stance, I would say not good. He was definitely controversial, but if you look at it more in that time, it's not as bad, I don't think.
Yeah. Hook.
I'm kind of thinking what he did was a little bit reasonable for that time period because kind of like piggybacking on what Fussy said, King Ferdinand was kind of gave him a mission to go discover after he after Columbus discovered the Americas. King Ferdinand pretty much told him to bring back everything he can so that they could trade it off. And if if Columbus wasn't able uh, to deliver on what King Ferdinand said, then he probably would have been like hung or tortured back in Spain. So so if he was getting pushback from the Native Americans, he kind of had to be rough with them and kind of just lay down the hammer and just take what he wants it because it's either kill or be killed back then. I kind of feel like yeah.
Yep. I
Oh,
agree with both those very well. But
Denney,
yeah.
I got one more. Another part I think too was the fact that the king and queen paid for his voyages.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, like, they don't want to have a wasted trip because that would be wasted money for them.
Yep.
I don't know. I think that was kind of probably a big part in it too.
Yeah, I agree with both those. That it's obviously going to be controversial pretty much till the end of time. But let's move on to the next one. Who do we got? We got Andrew Jackson.
Yep. 7th president of the United States.
All right. Take it
Jackson.
away, Fussy.
All right. So, well, we start as Andrew Jackson. He was basically, he kind of acted as a direct representative of the common man. And I believe that's how he pretty much ended up winning his election, along with other war victories, which we'll talk about in the future. But I mean, being basically a representative of the common man showed that he kind of believed in the American dream since he kind of lived it, since he didn't grow up with much. And obviously, becoming the president is a pretty big thing. So I would have to say that, I mean, this doesn't really make him controversial necessarily, but this is just kind of the setup for it. So he later on in my sources, he talks about leading the troops to some stunning victories. And obviously in this, he fought together with some Native Americans, and he also fought against Native Americans. So this was kind of like a weird concept in this time, because usually when you're fighting with people, you're not fighting against more people of the same type of culture, but they might have a little bit different beliefs. Because, like, obviously all Native Americans don't believe the exact same thing. There's different tribes and everything. But I don't know, it just seemed weird that he was kind of turning certain groups of Native Americans on each other, essentially. He was getting them to kill their own people.
Do you think that he was trying to just instill chaos so that he could, in a way, come around and be like the hero, the knight in shining armor that comes through and solves all the chaos?
I think that could have been a reason. I'm not 100% sure or not if it was, but I mean, it seemed like it was a pretty good tactic, because I believe the Native American forces that he was using against the other opposing Native American tribes, they served a good purpose, because, like, obviously they probably could give him some sort of intel on, what to expect out of these opposing tribes. So I think that probably gave him the upper hand on it. So I mean, yeah, it could have been to instill kind of like a power factor on him,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. I think he was just trying to do what was ever best for him and his immediate people, not even the tribes that he was working with. Because I mean, obviously later on he tries to basically get rid of Indian/Native Americans out of America. So
And
did that
yeah,
answer your question good?
yeah. And with that, did he kind of take it as a one-man show, or did he kind of have a following with it as well, and had groups of people that were working under him to help make sure that the Native Americans were like turning on each other?
I mean, he definitely, he was the general, so he kind of made the orders, but I'm sure there was other people, other American troops that kind of believed in the same thing as he did.
Yeah.
Um, with that being said, I think, I mean, I think he did it for America, because he might have believed that was right for America at the time. But I mean, I'm sure he wasn't opposed to getting some notoriety and some fame from it too.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, Andrew Jackson and his supporters opposed the Bank of the United States at the time, as you guys already know, you and Hook, because
Yep.
we talked about it in class. So I'm just kind of briefly going over it. He basically was saying that it was the expense of many, in which it only helped few people, because obviously, like, the rich were probably the ones using it more so. I mean, obviously, like, storing money and stuff. because a lot of people probably didn't have a ton of money back in those days.
Mhm.
Like I'm sure it's kind of like nowadays where there's people living paycheck to paycheck, but it would just be they wouldn't use banks like we do nowadays because they were still they were a relatively new thing at that time. But
And
what
with
was that?
with that, if you were to bring the controversial topic into one question about Andrew Jackson, what would the question be?
Whew. Okay, it'd be one question, but it'd hit on a few different things.
Mm-hmm.
It would be, I mean, it almost would be like the HTA that was given to us if like his legacy was seen as a tragedy, as like, being heroic,
Mm-hmm.
or like kind of would it be like a step in the right direction or the wrong direction? Because I mean, I don't know, it'd be like, would the Native Americans, do you think that that was justified to move more Americans in and kind of take over the land for, you know, quote unquote Americans?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I mean, do you think that it was, kind of a bad thing that he was doing this, and that it was kind of selfish for America at this time and Andrew Jackson and his troops?
And there's a lot of, I like that question because it really shows the amount of comparable topics, I guess, that are between Andrew Jackson and Christopher Columbus. Even though they're separated by a good amount of time, that there's still an
Ongoing form of trying to get rid of Native Americans, pretty much.
exactly, and like, even if you want to broaden it, you could even broaden it to the term of racial inequality. And
Mhm.
obviously that's still a topic of discussion for today,
It's
but
big.
you can see it all the way through our entire history, and not just in the last, let's say, 30 years, but you can see it for hundreds of years. And so it's different races, but at the same time, I think the main commonality is the power involved with the moves, with Andrew Jackson being seventh president and, well, soon to be, and being a general, and Christopher Columbus coming over here and discovering all this. They see the power involved, and then they get greedy and they want to push to get what, like, they want selfishly, and it
Yeah,
doesn't matter to them
better
what,
than them.
yeah, it doesn't matter what to them they have to do. They're going to do it so that they get the power figure and authority put behind their name.
Hook, did you want to say anything on it?
No, I got nothing.
Okay. Um, so I got two more things that I want to talk about because I thought they were kind of interesting, and I thought, I mean, they should probably be talked about. So this was kind of the more crazy story of Andrew Jackson that doesn't really get told a whole lot. Was he actually he agreed? This was before Jackson's wife was actually his wife. This was when they just started kind of going together. Her name was Miss Rachel Donaldson Robards, and she fled from her current husband at the time, and he went by Captain Robards. So if I refer to him, just know that that was her previous husband, who she's actually still married to at this time. And she agreed to flee with her new lover Jackson to Natchez, where Jackson and another man were protecting her from potential Indian attacks. This was a plan to get away from her old husband. Not really sure why she was trying to get away from him. I mean, she was just kind of falling in love with Andrew Jackson at the time. And her previous husband, Captain Robards, ended up seeking them out on September 27th, 1793, but nothing really happened because Jackson was pretty good at getting them away and not really leaving that much of a trail. Jackson was later tried in court on possible accounts of adultery and desertion. But with that being said, he was basically absent from the majority of the trials, and nothing really became of it. They ended up getting married later on and living a fairly normal life for the time. So I was kind of wondering what you guys thought of that, because I thought it was kind of crazy because you don't really hear of stories like that these days.
Yeah, I don't I won't knock her for it because she obviously agreed to leave with him
Mm-hmm.
for the time being, and at the same time, like I think the power figure thing kind of moves into talk as well with Andrew Jackson on this one, because with all this that he's doing and him being the general and all that, he sees the power behind it, and it's not only from a political view. He's able to, I'd say, manipulate people like her to do what he wants, and it obviously worked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna move on to the last part in which it just I'm gonna talk about Andrew Jackson and basically how some of his friends packed extra gunpowder into one of the guns he was about to fire, and the recoil ended up knocking him down, obviously, because it was a much harder punch to probably his shoulder and his body as
Mm-hmm.
a whole. But anyways, Jackson fell down from it, and that's kind of what they were hoping for, because he was kind of a hard ass of a character. Obviously, being a general of the military, you kind of expect that.
Yep.
But it was kind of funny, and Jackson wasn't happy, obviously, and he literally said that if anyone laughs, that he was going to kill him. And these were his buddies. Obviously, I don't think he literally meant he was going to kill him, but he might have got into a fight with him. But I thought this basically summed up Jackson as a whole. Like he was kind of a fearless leader. I mean, obviously, like he's killing off a bunch of people. He's killing off Indians. He's fighting wars and stuff too. And he's not really showing a whole lot of necessarily remorse for any of those type of battles. He does later on show some remorse when one of his former troops writes him a letter, and it kind of brought him back to those days on the battlefield, and he was talking about how he was sad with all the people that he watched die by his side. But he also realized that that's the cause and effect of getting a victory in war. You're gonna have to lose some, and you're gonna have to lose some, and you're gonna have to take some. So I think that's kind of it. Just really sums up Andrew Jackson as a whole, and just kind of what makes him so controversial is, I mean, he took some lives, but he also, he watched some of his guys die from the same thing he was doing. So there's other people in the wrong as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't
Just,
know. I was wondering what are your and Hook's thoughts on it
I'd say
as Jackson as a whole.
would I think it'd be almost the same mindset as I have with Andrew Jackson. The only difference I would have is that Andrew Jackson was like a legitimate power figure rather than Columbus being sent out by his power figures to go do something. Andrew Jackson was the guy leading more people per se, and even though Columbus was leading people, it wasn't with the guaranteed power like Jackson had with him being president and so on and so forth. But I think the controversy with those two is the ongoing schemes that people are seeing and learning about. And like with Columbus, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't learn in elementary school about how he was torturing and murdering and raping Native American women, but I learned about how he was the guy that
That
found
discovered.
America and all this other stuff. So I think with that, it's also everyone learning as they move on in school about what actually happens and when they gain their knowledge. So I don't think it's going to change people's views drastically on them, but I can see how the controversy is.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I like how you brought up the point about Andrew Jackson. About him being basically the king, the king and the queen, essentially, since he
Yep.
was the president, and how Columbus was just basically like a voyager. Like he still had to listen to other people telling him what to do, whereas Andrew Jackson he just made the rules himself, essentially. Hook, did you have any closing statements on
I'm
Andrew Jackson?
I'm pretty much just gonna piggyback off of what you guys said, how he just was a leader, and how back then there were still how the United States, now they're trying to move our civilization and our government more westward, and how they had to deal with the Native Americans and other enemies, and how Andrew Jackson kind of took that kill or be killed attitude, kind of same with Christopher Columbus, and kind of used it as a powerful figure. Since he was the president, he could just do it, I guess.
And one last closing statement for Andrew Jackson is, I would say, although he's a controversial figure like Columbus, there's still obviously people that will benefit from him, and there'll be people that don't benefit from him, kind of the same way with Christopher Columbus. So depending on who gets benefited and who doesn't, I think is just the way that you'll probably end up seeing him,
Yep.
as a whole. But anyways, we got one more, and the last one will be Nat Turner. Hook.
Yep. Alrighty, so Nat Turner I think, was probably one of the more influential African Americans, and probably led the most successful rebellion in American history. He led the slave rebellion in 1831, killing 57 non-white women, men, and children. And it was interesting because instead of choosing peace and talking it out and trying to fight for freedom with words, he decided to choose violence instead as the only option, and he actually vowed to kill every white person that they saw while they were on the rebellion. But it was interesting how the rebellion shook the South and ended up starting the White Terror. But his story kind of started when he was younger. He was an extremely intelligent young man. He learned how to read at a young age, which is very uncommon for slaves, and he became very religious because of that, because he just read the Bible and preached for most of his day. And the white people, they chose Christianity as a way to show the slaves that they were inferior to them, and that the white people would show passages in the Bible to the slaves showing how the slaves were inferior to white men. But Nat didn't really see it that way. He kind of saw the Bible as a way to teach people and to preach and to spread the words of God. And by doing this, he ended up getting the courage to leave his plantation at the age of 22. But while he was leaving, he ended up experiencing a vision, and the vision he experienced, he thought that was from God, and it was telling him to lead the people out of slavery. So he ended up going back and preached more, and then the people that he was preaching to started seeing him as a prophet, and then he started seeing himself as a prophet. And he kept on thinking that he's going to do many great things in his life. And it was around 1822 that was when he received another vision while working out in the fields, and he claimed that it was from Jesus Christ himself. And Jesus told him that he was going to lead the people out of slavery. And Nat Turner interpreted that with a slave rebellion, with war, with violence, because he tried to use in words, but as soon as he started to speak up about it, his masters would just beat him and silence him right away. And it was in 1831 was when he started the rebellion, and he was waiting for a sign from God, and they saw a solar eclipse, and he took that as a sign, and they planned for July 4th, 1831 to start the rebellion, but they held off because Nat Turner ended up becoming ill. And it wasn't until there was another eclipse a few weeks or months later, then that was when he interpreted it from God, saying like, now's the time to fight back. And a week from then, him, Nat Turner, and five other his followers ended up going into their master's home in the middle of the night, and they ended up killing the slave master, his wife, his 9-year-old son, and their child. And it was interesting because they were killing children and killing all these people, and they saw this fight. Nat Turner and his followers saw this fight as they were the good guys and they were fighting the evil way. I want to get you guys' input on like what you guys think about the good versus evil tactic that they were kind of seeing during that fight.
I'd say, like, obviously one of the pros for me is that he saw the fight or flight moment, and he saw the chance to escape, and he saw the planning, and he visioned what was going to happen and all that stuff, and it ended up working for him. But also at the same time, that movement showed to others that there's a way to get out of it, and you got to just move like with instinct and move instantly and move quick. And it really showed the true visions of the people at the time, whether you were pro-slavery, anti-slavery, slave owner, freed slave, all that stuff. You got to stand with what you're believing and what you're wanting to happen and express it at that time. So Nat Turner knew what he was viewed and what he viewed should be the life for him, and he moved on it and was able to get the success out of it that he needed.
I would have to say, well, I think it was really important what he did, because, I mean, if he doesn't start that, the basically the revolution of his own, the rebellion, I don't know if the slaves ever kind of rebel after that. I mean, there might be another leader in the black community at a later point that ends up kind of doing the same thing. But I mean, who knows? Then the whole slavery topic might have been delayed even more after that if it wasn't for Nat Turner.
Yeah,
And
because he'd have to see, like Abe Lincoln, for example. If he had waited, then Abe Lincoln might not have been in office, or he wouldn't have been voted, and then when would be the next time?
exactly.
And
You
that's
don't know
part of the fight or flight.
would do the Emancipation Proclamation either.
Yeah.
But the other part that I was thinking too is I mean, obviously I don't condone killing at all. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a good thing to do, but I don't think they really had any other choice. I think I mean, obviously they would try to get out of slavery as they could peacefully, and obviously the slave owners would either kill them or they'd get some brutal whippings, or get hanged or something. So I'd have to say I think Nat Turner did the right thing and one of the only possible things during that time.
Alrighty, so back to their journey in the rebellion. So Nat Turner and his followers just killed his slave masters at the plantation. They continued their fight, and they ended up killing about 55 to 65 more white people on the way to Jerusalem, Virginia. But on their way, they were met by an American militia with other military leaders, and they were pretty much just wiped out and taken down right before they got to their destination. And they were all executed except for Nat Turner. He ended up escaping and escaped out and was hiding out in the wilderness for a few weeks until he was found again, where he was eventually tried for 6 days and was executed. But the thing about his execution was that after he was hung, they ended up defiling and kind of like destroyed his body. Kind of, they tore off his limbs, they skinned him, chopped off his head, sold all of his body parts as like trophies, kind of. And I thought it was interesting because I think that was kind of like sending a message out to other slaves that were wanting to start like another rebellion, or wanted to try to defy like their masters, uh, to say. And I kind of want to get your guys' quick input on why you think that was a good tactic to kind of stop another rebellion.
I'd say it'd be in their best interest because a little bit goes a long way in that sense. The one rebellion was strong, and if the second one, let's say, didn't go as planned, or they were overpowered, or it just send the message back that we can rule you and there's no way out for you. So if they kept it to that one, it'd leave more questions in the air for everyone about how strong the slave rebellion would be.
I think it was also really important, and I think it probably gave the Black community at the time probably a much more hopeful aspect for the the future. Because I mean, obviously before that, I mean, there wasn't really. I mean, there might have been some rebellions, but it probably wasn't anything nearly as big as Nat Turner's. So I think Nat Turner kind of let them know, hey, we can do something about this. We've got hope for the future and for our own kind.
What was really, really good about his rebellion, besides everybody ended up being executed, but it actually turned some heads in Congress, and they had political debates about what to do with the slave threat of another rebellion starting. They were talking about shipping all the slaves back to Africa, or like a possible Emancipation Proclamation, which was actually interesting. Thomas Jefferson Randolph actually opposed an emancipation, and it was actually voted for in Congress, but unfortunately fell a few votes short. And instead, they debated on anti-literacy bills for slaves, and they also voted on whether or not freed slaves would be put back into slavery. And it really made the Nat Turner's rebellion. It really made the Southern government officials relook at and reanalyze their slavery laws, and made it harder for slaves to start anything up again. And with my closing statements, I just want to ask you guys if there was like anything else controversial to Nat Turner's rebellion that you guys could think of. Anything? Yeah.
Nope, I think we covered it pretty well.
Perfect.
Yeah, for me, Hook, I think you hit the nail on the head with it pretty well. I think you pretty much described all the aspects of it pretty well, and we kind of went over any of the other ones, so good job.
Perfect.
All right. Well, that concludes our episode for the day. Please tune in next time to Kevin Mason's History Channel.
If you are, I'm gonna let you know.